Good morning and welcome to Exploring Glorantha. I'm JM, your Isseries initiate, and with me as always is Evan, who is definitely our Lancor my Rune Lord. And for those of you who are unaware, Evan will soon have a Glorantha release through the Escalation magazine. I'm reading through the preview copy, and I just got to tell you, it is brilliant for all of your 13th Age Glorantha lunar-loving needs. Well done, Evan. It's just I'm so excited.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I look forward to getting it into people's hands. And because the PDF is coming out from Escalation, we believe that it will be a joint release through the Johnstown Compendium. The PDF will be free, and there will be a print on demand at cost option through Johnstown Compendium. So everything seems to be on track for that. Again, nailing down all the last details, but
well, it just means I'm gonna have to buy it and then do a review of it, a scathing review.
Absolutely, please hurt me, man, hurt
me. So John Doom, really, I miss a session and two people almost die. This is why you need Alan Darian there like all the time. So today we are in the second of what promises to be episodes of
more than two,
probably more than three of the temporal look at Glorantha, and we're in the middle of the Second Age. Evan and I have our X-Acto knives ready to cut our tongues down the center and become part of the Empire of Wyrm, friends. And that's what we're talking about today. We covered the God Learner Empire last episode. Go check it out. It's chock full of just amazing detail. I'll get the outlines for the whole Empire Second Age series put together once they're all done. But today we're talking about the second main empire, right? The Second Age of Glorantha really is an age of empires, which is kind of a catchy title. Somebody should make like a video game, I think.
Like a series.
Of those. But today we're talking about the Empire of Wyrm, friends, who, much like the God Learners, started off on kind of a noble path and ended poorly. Ended up causing like the worst atrocity to ever be visited on Dragon Pass against the humans.
Yeah, humans.
So
time a dozen.
Evan.
Yeah.
Paint me a word picture.
How do we start? So we're looking at the beginning. We're going to look at them as mature empires and as collapsing empires later on. But today, how do we start? The God Learners are a more classic, development of innovative, governing and religious theories, etc. What the Empire of Wyrm's, friends, starts with a sort of spiritual revolution. First there's a traditionalist Orlantha kingdom that becomes the ascendant power in Dragon Pass, and in fact is sort of an outgrowth of the logical outgrowth of the end of the first age, where the Orlantha supporting at least supporting Arkat's goals to destroy the Nicelorian Empire, and working with Azkan Keiko, the only old one.
He might be one of my favorite figures in all of Gloranthan history.
Yeah.
Plus, I like saying his name.
Yeah. And we've been talking about Azkan Keiko from the beginning. He appears in the Lightbringer's quest. He is a pivotal figure on into the Third Age. But so you have sort of your traditionalist, resurgent Orlanthe kingdoms in Dragon Pass proper, and you have the return of Esrolian culture under the protection and patronage of the Shadowlands, ruled by the only old one. And then sort of halfway into the first century of the Second Age, something starts to change. Somebody is sort of the first person inspired. They in some ways you might say illuminated in a kind of way where he discovers how to connect with dragons and draconic thought. One story says that Wyrm tricked him and split his tongue and his heart and his brain so that he was able to speak draconic, which is so alien that game mechanically you can't learn more than 25%, because there's so many alien ways that dragons and dragon spawn communicate that humans can't really engage typically.
Yeah. And this splitting of the brain and the tongue to become more dragon-like becomes kind of the core of, I would say, kind of where things start to go wrong, not necessarily initially, but when the leadership is becoming more alien to the humanity of the Empire, this is just going to cause a lot of issues down the line. Now he told his friends, and because everybody was like, "Hey, it doesn't seem to be that bad. Look, we can learn some new magic. Let's all split our tongues." And then he went off a cliff, and all of his friends went no. And they end up forming these the waltz and hunting bands. Can you like tease that out for us? Like, because the waltz band.
Right. Well, these are pretty, in some ways kind of mysterious, but the idea is that these were groups of individuals who had accepted this dragon enlightenment, and through movement and through the way that they moved across the landscape, they demonstrated this draconic way, and you conveyed it to people and started to open their minds, but also they opened the landscape. Like, the spiritual tone of the world started to change for people, and so then it was almost like there was a virus in the air, or if we look more like it, like there had been an update to the software, such that people were suddenly influenced by dragon myths and dragon stories, and they started to merge into regular life. So these waltzing and hunting bands were the sort of missionary bands, and it's kind of interesting that not unlike the Lunar Empire, the EWF, or the youth, which is sometimes the way that it's referred to.
Yeah, I've never referred to them as the youth.
I know, but there's I'll save that for later when we're talking about other resources and things. But anyway, it is in fact one of the accepted ways of referring to it. I wouldn't normally use it myself, but I just recently heard it used. That they are actively trying to change hearts and minds, and landscape and spiritual, the spiritual landscape and the mythic landscape, to conform to a radically different way of seeing the world. And boy, that sounds in some ways like the Lunar Empire.
Yeah.
But this experimentation, it is, of course, at first not appreciated by the traditionalist leadership.
Right, and it spreads pervasively. Like we have,
Right.
this is not like an intellectual cult like the God Learners. This is not,
Right.
this is a rapidly spreading sort of almost viral meme, because we have people, in the priesthood, we have people in the nobility, but also like house mothers and ordinary people are getting caught up in the thrill and the potentiality of this worm speaking cult. Jason says it sounds like euphemism. Jason, I don't know how to reward you, but I want you to know that my intent is to reward you for that. So, if you play Savage Worlds, tell everyone that I have given you a Benny.
Yeah.
It's just,
At the end of the season, he gets a power gain roll.
there you go. Yeah, you can have a power gain roll. Tell your GM to come watch this. I have no authority, but if he'll allow it, you can have it. And so we start to see, as it spreads, the Orlanthi traditionalists start to take notice. And actually, this is where things start to take an interesting turn, because, right, Dragon Pass is the seat of the Orlanthi cult. And suddenly, the most pervasive cult in the region is, I don't know that I would call it anti-Orlanthi, but definitely, instead of Orlanthi Rex, Orlanthi subservient, right? All of the Orlanthi myths are about how he tamed this dragon, and how he killed that dragon, and how he has this dragon's skull in his pouch, and it does things. And all of a sudden, we have this dragon consciousness cult spreading in the heartland of the Dragon Slayer. And as you may imagine, things start to progressively deteriorate.
Right. Well, and so the leadership and there is a traditionalist reaction to this, and they suppress what's going on, and it's the traditionalist kingdom is still ascending. Not only were they the dominant power, but towards the end of the 6th century, they also decide to throw off their links and a certain amount of subservience to the trolls that were established under Arcat. Arcat required, because of the great sacrifice of the trolls and them being very close allies, that they had to they got to collect a tax every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so this later king of the Orlanthi kingdom, Hardros Hardslaughter, leads a revolt called the Tax Slaughter, where they basically, the trolls showed up to collect the taxes. They were all killed. And he actually was able to invade the castle of Black Glass and killed the only old one. Now, as we know, sometimes mostly dead is still slightly alive.
That's right.
And particularly for heroes and near immortals like the only old one, he came back, resurrected, but Hardros dictated terms, and the tax and old oaths were renounced. So then they're able to sort of turn to further engaging with these dragon speakers, and Hardros does this with the full support of the Orlanthi clergy, the high priests of Orlanth and the influential temples. This is, in some ways they're going back and emulating uh, uh, that Orlanth, although he made common cause against chaos with the trolls, he was also a great fighter of darkness, and so they're sort of leaning into that mythic. We're not dominated by darkness. We're the storm tribe, and so they throw that off. Interestingly, at this time, the sort of concept of Orlanth Rex was actually not incorporated. Although the king was very important, there was a different balance of power between kings and priests at this time.
If I may
Yeah,
interrupt just for two things. One, yes,
absolutely.
Grimnock can have a Benny. And James, thanks for joining us. James says that he loves the videos and loves that there's so many of them. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
the priesthood eventually calls for uh, the persecution of what becomes the cult of the inner dragon. They're like, listen, this is enough is enough. This is growing too powerful. We're starting to lose power. And kind of through us, Orlanth is sort of being, his role in the region is being changed. And let's be honest, cults don't like that when that happens, right? Um, I won't I won't go down the path of talking about the ball cycle here. And so what we get is the Dragon Seed War, where the priestly ring basically says, "Hey, dragons are the foes of all good and true Orlanthi people, and anybody who is involved in this, by proxy, is an enemy of the Orlanthi people." And I mean, this just goes on for almost 3 years, where they're hunting down, they're persecuting this cult until there's this revelation. I'll turn it back over to my esteemed scholar of this new facet of Orlanth. Not Orlanth Dragonslayer, not Orlanth Victorious, not Orlanth Lightbringer, not Orlanth Rex, but strangely enough, Orlanth Dragonfriend.
That's
Hey
right.
guys, we can synchronize this whole thing right up. It'll be fine. So Evan, tell us about Orlanth Dragonfriend.
Right. Well, so during this whole Dragon Seed War, which lasted not uh, uh, a long time, and there was a period of
Oh,
this
13 years,
suppression.
not 3 years.
Yeah. Uh, uh, but
I can math.
it just pushes the Dragon Friends underground. But they are still uh, uh, powerful and influential, and they create somebody. They cultivate someone, a person known as Abderun the Flyer, and it seems clear that he was a hero quester because he manages to reveal that, in fact, contrary to sort of the common understanding of Orlanth always being an enemy of the dragons, in fact, Orlanth has a strong connection to dragons, and in fact that there is this aspect and forgotten facet to Orlanth, the Orlanth dragon friend, and so and he spreads this revelation, and this is similar to sorts of revelations that we see in other times in the Dawn Ages, where the Lightbringer missionaries were saying, "Oh, well, you have this this agricultural god, and then you also have this warrior god. Guess what? They're the same." And this is Orlanth. All of this is Orlanth, and they put these pieces back together. And later on, you also have, sort of the Yalmalio revelation,
Mm-hmm.
that Elmal was in fact Yalmalio. And so, there are these whole series of things that revolutionize the understanding for people, um, whether they are good or bad.
The real sun god is the friends we made along the way.
That's right. There we go. The mini suns.
That's right.
Um, so this revelation is revolutionary. Suddenly, the priesthood flips
Mm-hmm.
from Orlanth is the dragon fighter to, oh my gosh, we were wrong all along. He is. They it's not an intellectual argument or realization. It
No.
is a mythological revelation that fundamentally changes their relationship to the mythology.
And I feel like for me, and this is we'll get into this when we talk about why study the beginning of the Empire of Worm Friends here at the end. But to me, if you look at how the Empire of Worm Friends develops and how quickly it spreads and how um, pervasive it is, it really feels like this. I don't want to say insidious because I don't know that it's insidious at this point, but sort of this rapid viral um, acceptance of the cult. The priesthood is the last holdout, and almost as soon as they make this revelation, it just infects and spreads through the priestly class as well. They're like, finally, we found our vector in. And
Yeah.
as Evan said, it is such a dramatic switch flip
Yeah.
that I can't help but wonder if there's a little bit of this draconic consciousness kind of that I'm using the term infection because that's how I speak of the lunar cult as well. I will say, just as a side note, Evan and I got to be guests on the God Learners podcast to talk about the lunar way. And despite the fact that the internet is forever, I feel like I was pretty egalitarian towards the lunars. And
Open your heart, Jan. Open
let
your
the
heart.
record show. Um, oh,
Um, yeah.
so that, I mean, over
So
the next 50 years, this cult just explodes. The cult of the inner dragon explodes throughout Dragon Pass. And
right.
it becomes one of the primary, if not the ascendant way of interacting with the god time for the Orlanthi, which should be a a warning sign. But those warning signs don't apply to the youth. They never apply to the youth, right? The youth are always upstarts and creating new slang and listening to their music. I'm always telling the youth to get off my lawn.
Those
Uh,
two youths.
that's right.
Um,
And a dragon gets
so yeah.
accepted among the Thunder Brothers,
Right.
which is unheard of. The companions of Orlanth. Suddenly now we've always had a dragon as a part of the Thunder Brothers, guys.
Right. Right. That's the nature of the revelation, and because it goes through the priesthood, then in all of the again, we have to understand that Orlanthi society, like the societies throughout Glorantha, constantly cyclically reinforce the mythic stories which structure everyone's lives and the flow of time and responsibilities, the agricultural cycle, and so there's a whole series of holy days, culminating in the sacred time rituals which renew the world, and suddenly the dragon stories are there, and they're there every week, every season, and culminating in how Orlanth Lightbringer was also a dragon, or was also friendly with dragons, or connected to dragons. And this the ground had already been sort of prepared in the century before, in sort of starting to influence the population in general with dragon visions, dragon dreams, feelings of of insight into dragons, and then in sort of conquering, in many ways, mythically, the priesthood, and incorporating this revelation into everyone's day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
experience of their spirituality. It completely changed the nature of society in Dragon Pass.
Well, and I think that's something to kind of point out because, right, the cultures in Glorantha are very liturgical, and that means what they worship is what they do. And this is something as a GM that you can use in your current games. Study the techniques of the EWF to torment and destroy your players' clans. Because if a new rite is put in, a new festival, a new ceremony, a new hero quest is put into the calendar, then it is going to continually cycle back and become ingrained. And new people that are brought into the cult are going to assume this is the way it's always been. And that kind of thing can change the course of a cult in a single generational lifetime. And that's one of the things that I love taking out of the story of the EWF is, I mean, we had it in our runequest game where somebody discovered a new hero quest and they're like, oh, well, we should incorporate this. And it's like, well, that's not everything you find in the God time should be brought back. Something the Seven Mothers should have learned.
Sounds like loser talk to me.
Oh, the battle lines have been drawn. Evan, just make like a dozen characters for TPK this fall, because I'm going to go through at least 3 of them. Like,
That's fair.
So once they kind of consolidate and settle into Dragon Pass, we start to see, very much in a similar way to the first council empire in the first age, we see the birth of empire comes not as Evan said, in a very traditional way that we see in the God learners, but in actually, I mean, there's a lot of parallels to the first council where they're like, hey, we're going to send missionaries out. We're just going to spread this illumination. Oh, you don't want this illumination? Oh, you're it starts off with kind of a little bit of a pushback, and gradually this illumination mindset turns into an imperial mindset. Well, hey, we're gonna push out. It's interesting to me now that I'm talking about this. We get the parallels of the first council's expansion gets paralleled in the EWF, and the Lunars have that same arc, though married a little bit more of the traditional side as well. But you have this, I mean, like, look at the conquest of Dragon Pass by the Lunars, right? It starts off with the missionaries that then eventually, like, the missionaries are the velvet glove. The Iron Fist is coming behind us.
Yeah. Also the bat, but anyway.
Also the Crimson Bat, which is terrifying. And I did not bring this up in our Ludo interview with Ludo and Jorg, but the Crimson Bat is the source of the single greatest sidebar to exist in any Gloranthan project ever. It's in the 13th Age Glorantha book. When they're talking about the Crimson Bat, Jonathan says something along the lines of, hey, listen, as the GM, it's your job to adjudicate roles fairly. That's one of your primary goals. Tell the story and interpret the dice fairly. Unless, of course, your players are dumb enough to go on the back of the Crimson Bat. In which case, when they want to do something that bends or breaks the rules, have them roll a normal save. If they fail, tell them you're sorry, but it doesn't work. If they succeed, tell them you're sorry and it doesn't work, and you shouldn't be trying stupid stuff on the back of the Crimson Bat anyway. And he just goes off on this rant. It's like, it's the lunar goddess's personal demonic chaos steed. Nothing will go your way on the back of it. I'm like, Single greatest piece of role-playing text in Glorantha ever, right there.
And you spoke to Jonathan and Rob about that in your interview
Yes.
behind the screen, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
So yes, that's exactly right, and we have to understand now that once the Empire of Worm's Friends organizes for war, for conquest, that their connection with the dragons means that they connect with the dragon newts, who are have cities and outposts throughout Dragon Pass, and also
The Dragon Roads.
all the dragon roads,
Mm-hmm.
and also all sorts of dragon related creatures in Glorantha, for example. Dinosaurs, although they have this connection to the earth goddess Marin Gore, the earth shaker, they are also the spawn of immature dragon eggs
Mm-hmm.
that hatched. And there are a whole lot of other dragon related worms and wyverns. They all have this connection, and because of these draconic powers and connections that the Empire Worms Friends have, you have armies with dinosaur cavalry, with flying support from dream dragons, from wyverns, worms. I mean, it's terrifying.
Well, and here's the thing. We talked about how both the God Learners, and we're going to get through kind of the ascendancy of both of these empires. Both of these empires are going to grow. We probably have 2 episodes left. We'll talk about kind of, empires, from ascendancy to decline and then to collapse in the 4th episode. But out of the 2 of them, right, the God Learners have this very philosophical and refined, almost philosopher king kind of approach to everything, and this very Campbellian, like, let's mix and match the gods. We'll talk about that next time. But the EWF starts off as just like, it appeals to the Riffs player in me. Like, all right, well, how about Stegosaurus cavalry and, Wyvern air support and, some immortal dragon newts? And how cool is this? It's very cool, and I want to be a part of this.
Right. And you just have to completely change your
Yes, Jason, I
mindset.
remember that one too. Sorry.
Yeah, you just have to rewrite the software in your brain so that you connect to draconic thought, which is alien to, in some ways, to being a human being.
Yeah, and that's
the more you advance sort of along this path, the more detached you become from what it is to be mortal and human.
And that's really the key here, is that both empires are founded on sort of this Gnostic, we've got the secret knowledge that's going to help us survive the Second Age. Because think about it, both of these empires start right after an apocalypse, right? The Nicelor Gabaji Arcat War destroys basically everything. Like, familial and clan bonds and tribe bonds are torn asunder. Cults are destroyed. New cults are created. A whole new way of dealing with hero quests is created. And the grand and amazing works of the First and Second Council are cast down, and the people are once again kind of like at the start of the First Age, going, got to pick up these pieces again. We've got to discover what we've lost. And so both of these empires are founded on, we've got the secret knowledge that's going to enable us to succeed here. And the God Learners comes from hey, we can reconcile all of this. This is all, to us from the invisible God. We can understand it all. And so that's more of a philosophical, intellectual Gnosticism. the EWF is very much more of this like intuition, very kind of an emotional response kind of secret knowledge that both end up removing you from the very support structures and the very like foundational nature of Gloranthan living, which is, hey, the cults, we interact with the gods, and there's this symbiotic relationship. The god learners are like, we don't need the symbiotic relationship. Look, we can manipulate the gods. And the EWF is like, well, all you have to do to survive in the Second Age is become less human and more dragon-like. What could possibly go wrong with that?
Right. And
Agreed, Jason.
the EWF has kind of more of an inward path, and they're kind of moving outward slowly. They're remaking all of society, and then looking to spread out first through missionary work, and then when they meet resistance and hostility through more conventional, well, except with dragons and dinosaurs, conventional conquest. And the god learners are again like this. We can rationally involve ourselves with the world, and we can manipulate the magical powers therein. And we're going to just go out. We are explorers. We are not inward explorers so much, although there was with the abiding book a deep spiritualism, but they were very much heading out to other continents, other islands, other lands, and we're going to grab those places. We're going to change them. We're going to improve them and ourselves through this expansion and interaction. And and there was more of an initial like inward path for the EWF, and then a sort of inexorable pushing outwards, with some sort of mysterious plan of transformation, that required sort of draconic patience.
Yeah. So we've got about 15 minutes left. I think we've set up the EWF. We've set up the God Learners. We're going to see them at their height in a month. But why is this important to our Third Age campaign? And I think we've pointed out, so good world building is a lot like our real world, where there are fractals, things that keep growing out yet remain part of the whole that they were brought out from, right? The God Learners, the Middle Sea Empire, and the youth. Now I'm just going to call, you know what? It got in my head like a replicating viral meme. It is now. I'm like, it's the youth. And the EWF, the Empire of Wyrm Friends, the Third Age are just echoes of what happened here. And those, as we pointed out, are echoes of the First and Second Council, which are echoes of the God time, right? Things continue to repeat in new ways, recapitulated ways. But
Right.
the God Learners, their way of hero questing is alive and well, not just in the Lunar Empire, but I mean, that's the foundation for, the Seven Mothers quest. But also, Argrath is doing experimental hero questing. Kalir Starbrow tries it. Your characters should try it. I mean, it's kind of clear from RuneQuest 1 that this is the thing that helps characters gain the power that they crave to go out and change the world. This experimental hero questing. We also see a return of this. So if that's kind of our cat First and Second Council, we see a return. The Unity Council was, very much inward focused, as was the EWF, as is Argrath, right? There is this introspection. We see it in the Lunar Empire as well with the followers of the White Moon. This idea that, hey, maybe enlightenment is delved within, not without. But Argrath is messing around with the dragons as well. The dragons obviously have a big part in the Third Age, right? The Dragon Temple, right? Dragon,
The Dragon
the
Rise.
Dragon Rise. That's what I'm looking for.
Under the Temple of the Reaching Moon,
Exactly.
what was to be the pinnacle of lunar domination of Dragon Pass. It would have revolutionized, the lunars would have, stable and preeminence, magical and spiritual preeminence within the path with the completion of that. And instead, a dragon woke up, or was rather awakened.
Yeah, a dragon was awakened.
And destroyed the temple, ate an army, and ate, most of the most powerful people, not just in Dragon Pass, but who had traveled from the Empire. I mean, it's an incredible blow. But on the other hand, like, somebody woke up a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And
which, I mean, the EWF kind of did, just not in the same way.
Exactly. Well, but so not to skip ahead, but we've talked about this before. The what happens in Dragon Pass is an annihilation of all civilization, all human civilization, by dragons.
Yeah, the Dragon Kill War is named not because we killed dragons, but for what the dragons did to wipe the EWF. I mean, scour them from the face of Glorantha.
They were indiscriminate in that, and we'll go into the details of that as we talk about the decline of the empires. But in the end, the dragons proved that it didn't matter what side you were on. Were you pro-dragon, anti-dragon, didn't really care about dragons? If you were a human at Dragon Pass, you got eaten or vaporized, etc. And so the sort of alienness and otherness of the dragons was reasserted, and that scarred humanity for centuries. It's like, if you go through the one of the things I mentioned in the notes is the clan creation, the great clan creation process that came out of Sardar Kingdom of Heroes. And one of the things is about what is your clan's attitude towards dragons? How did they experience this? Centuries ago, but it's still part of your clan's story. And it's like, we would never trust dragons. Dragons are terrible. Or, hey, maybe there was something to learn from them.
I've got to say that is still a foundational document every time I run.
Absolutely.
RuneQuest. Like, if you can find the clan creation, which you can find it online, I think they host it at the Well of
Daliath.
Well of Daliath has a copy.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to do it for your group or with your group. So I typically run it where I start with one person and everyone gets a vote, and the person to my left is the tiebreaker. And as soon as they break a tie, the tiebreaker role passes to the next person, so that people can feel like they're part of this. Running through that clan creation document, even for yourself, will give you just this amazing view of the history of this clan. And it's such a well put together questionnaire that you'll learn so much about the history of Glorantha just by walking through this kind of step-by-step clan creation document.
Right. So that's one answer to, like, why do we care about it in the Third Age? Because your people still remember what happened. And because Argrath and some of his followers are starting to explore these things again, I mean, some people will remember the EWF and the great power that it had. But others, their ancestral stories will be, these powers are exceptionally dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time a group started to mess with them, it ended very poorly. So, maybe they're going to be more skeptical. They're going to be the counselors who say, if you get into Argrath's inner circle, you're going to say, "Hey, let's go a different direction," and or there it could build conflict. And so something that where I heard you recently is that Austin Conrad, an author on the Johnstown
Mm-hmm.
Compendium, was recently interviewed by the God Learners a little bit before our interview, which is forthcoming. And he has a second Treasures of Glorantha, and they are treasures of the Second Age. So he has
Awesome.
taken God Learner and EWF or youth items, and given them stories, use his own, of course, imagination to weave them into the history of Dragon Pass and the history of the Second Age. And many of them are not unmitigated goods or
Mm-hmm.
or terrible bads that need to be disposed of, but things that just have consequences because of what happened in the Second Age. And so that's a great interview that Jorgen
Oh yeah.
and Ludo do, and it sounds like a really interesting product, something I haven't been able to pick up yet. But again,
I got
if
an
you want
order
to have a
coming.
connection.
Yeah, I've got to
Hmm?
get an order sent out
Yeah,
because there's a bunch of Glorantha burning holes in my
so many,
pocket.
so many.
Yeah.
Um, but so that's a very practical way to sort of connect your characters. Is you find you go into a ruin that was affected by this, and the landscape of Dragon Pass is filled with these, certainly EWF, but the God Learners were making inroads here as well, and the what was the Holy Country, or what is later the Holy Country, at that time was sort of a contested space between the God Learners on the coast and the EWF. And so there are ruins, there are artifacts, there are memories, there
Yeah.
are myth fragments, um, and and these sources are clearly going to be exploited in the hero wars. The the Because these things do repeat, and we already know that the leaders and the heroes and the aspiring heroes are delving back into the Second Age, into the First Age, to find pathways, to find
Mm-hmm.
uh, 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 knowledge and artifacts that will, they hope, turn the tide in the struggle to survive, the next apocalypse, and to be involved in the struggles in Dragon Pass. It's the struggle between the Lunar Empire and Sardar, but things are happening throughout the world that signal, the possible end of an age.
Well, and the thing to remember is nothing stays dead and buried in Glorantha. That's why we're doing it. We're doing this, right?
Right, right.
Nicelor and Gabaji is something that happens in the first age and yet has returned in the third. So this recapitulation and fractal nature of Gloranthan reality is super important. But as a GM, take notes from that and go, hey, if this is something cool I loved in the first or second age, I can bring it back in a new way in the third
Absolutely.
age. And the other
Yeah.
thing is, like, I'll go back to this thing about how insidious the changes to the cults were for the EWF. Like, now I want to run games where maybe the Lunars have sent someone into Orlanthe culture to essentially install a new hero myth that will make the Orlanthe spiral around and change them to a more pro-lunar way. Like
Well,
and rival clans could do this, or rival tribes. Um,
right.
I mean,
Well,
in my RuneQuest game, the group found had to try and find a way they promised the trolls that they were going to ally with that they would find a way to um, bring a healer goddess back to these trolls who had lost their healer goddess. And instead of finding a troll one, they went through Jinnajar in the Lightbringer quest and brought Chalana Arroy to the trolls, which changes Chalana Arroy, like in ways they did not see possible. Like, this is the beauty of looking at these old stories. You can say, oh, wow, look at how the cults were used in this way. I wonder if I can use them going forward. And then as a player, who doesn't want Dino Cavalry or the secret esoteric knowledge of dragons? Like, if this story interests you as a player, go to your GM and say, hey, I would like to find some, Empire of Wyrm friends knowledge or power or something like that, explore ruin. And I guarantee your GM is like, well, I do like giving you enough rope to hang yourself, so sure, let's go down this path.
Let's do it. And I would point, since we did recently talk about the Lunar Way book, the Lunars have already tried to do that in introducing the cult of Hanil in
Yes.
Tarsh. They tried to they had some success in entering her into the connection with the Earth goddesses pantheon. There, it wasn't a complete success. They swung for the fences to try and make her one of the great Earth goddesses and accepted. And it's been a little bit of a square peg, but it's exceptionally successful in general in Tarsh. They might, like you say, do it in a smaller way, to as a revelation, bit by bit of, oh yes, Arnalda is the great green goddess, but did you also know about Arnalda of the red earth or something like that?
Or you like Isseries.
Oh yeah,
we've got his daughter,
right.
Atares. It's very close.
Yeah,
it's very synchronistic. Like, here we can.
Yeah. I mean, those cults absolutely cooperate in markets. It's noted in the Lunar Way, for example, that Atares is not a goddess of neutrality. It is of trade and exchange, but Isseries is the neutral, has the power to create the neutral ground. But they cooperate because it's mutually beneficial. Yeah. And to connect it all back, Isseries and Lankor Mai were instruments of the God Learner Empire. They spread those cults everywhere because collecting and systematizing knowledge and organizing trade was fundamental to their empire. So even though the God Learner and Empire Wyrm friends are struggling against one another in many places, God Learner ideas and trade and items are coming into the EWF through Isseries. And that happens later in the exchange between the Lunar Empire and Sartor, because they still have stuff that they want to exchange. They're not engaged in a trade war, and they're not shutting down the borders. That's kind of impossible in a Bronze Age sort of situation. And so anyway, there are a million stories to be told here, and that's why we are recounting all of these matters, because it will add depth of play and excitement to your games.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. We'll be back in a month where we're going to talk about these empires ascendant and as they kind of clash with each other. And Evan, as always, I just love running Exploring Glorantha with you. I learned so much. And we're going to be back in the studio tomorrow night. We've got one episode left to hit the can in the beginning of July, and that'll bring the end to the first adventure of our 13th Age second edition playtest with Evan and Rob and Becca and Mark and Ben. And we're going to be in the studio tomorrow recording what happens next, the second level adventure. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This is my co-host Evan. Thank you so much.
We are all us.
We are all us. We will see you all in a month for more exploring Glorantha. Have a good one.